This Dogman sighting comes with a twist of sorts. This is truly one of the weirdest sightings I've looked into. This sighting comes out of New York. The witness says that him and two of his friends decided to go camping in the mountains of New York. That there was a dirt road that ran up the mountain, with many little side roads breaking off of this one, with some very good camping sites. They wasn't for sure if they were allowed to camp there, but they were a lot of fire pits, so they knew that many people do camp there. So they picked a spot and set up camp. While they got the fire going, he said that they had a couple of beers. Now, as the sun started to go down, they were just sitting around the camp bitching about their women, he said. Now, this is when he says everything just went dead quiet, saying that all three of them just looked at each other, stating that they couldn't even hear the crickets anymore. He thought maybe a lightning storm was coming, saying you could feel the static in the air, and that all his hair on his back of his neck stood straight up. His friend Jamie started saying that he felt like the air was humming, when all of a sudden they heard a really deep bass noise. While they saw a bright light in the distance that flashed up and lit up the entire woods, at least everything they could see, stating that it looked as if it was a really big firework that exploded. For the first few seconds, anyway, he says, that it lasted for probably a minute before it seemed to split up into three or four other lights and shot back into the woods. He says that they could still see all the lights still glowing off in the woods, that then there was a large gust of wind that hit them, and that after that it was gone. He says that after all of this happened, that it smelled like it had just rained, but that it never did, saying that they didn't even know what to do at this time, so they just decided to wait it out. But nothing else ever happened. They thought that maybe it was a meteor or something, so they just left it alone and went back to bitching about their women again. So it got to be around 2 in the morning and they decided to turn in for the night. The witness said that him and Jamie went to sleep in the tent while Dan wanted to sleep by the fire. Now it was about an hour later and they was being woke by Dan shaking them. As they were waking up, the witness heard Dan saying that there was something big watching the campsite. Dan said that this thing was about 50 feet from the fire, that he thought that it might be a bear, but that it was standing up on two legs while bobbing back and forth like it was trying to get a better look at him. Now, as Dan was still talking, they heard a loud scream. The witness said that he had never heard anything like it before, saying that it sounded almost like a big pig being slaughtered while being much deeper in tone, that it was so loud that it made your ears ring. The witness says that the next thing he remembers was hearing three or four of these things running towards the camp. Whatever these creatures were, they started kicking embers from the fire upon the tent, and that they kept running up to the tent and grunting, then returning back to the woods, stating that every now and then one of these creatures would scream and pull one of the tent poles, dragging the tent a foot or two, saying that the tent started collapsing on one side and that they didn't know what else to do. So he says they all started screaming as loud as they could, saying that only about a minute after they all started screaming, everything went quiet again. Now, with it being quiet, they all decided to make a run for the truck. He says once they hit the truck and started it, that in their headlights they saw one of these creatures standing in the middle of the road. Seeing this thing there, the witness told Jamie to gun it. Now, as if this creature had heard him say this, it puffed up its chest and straightened up. Now, the witness stated that when this creature stood straight, that it had to be around 8 feet tall, saying that this thing had dark gray hair all over its body except for its front, which looked to be white or yellowish around its chest area, while its face looked dog-like, but slightly different. He says he knows what a Bigfoot is supposed to look like, and this thing was way different than that. Now, the witness says that this creature didn't even move as they drove at it, that it just stood there looking at them, that they had to swerve around this thing to miss it, saying that he thinks that it wasn't going to move and that they would have had to run over it. Now, they drove down the mountain. Once they made it down, they stopped at a gas company parking lot, saying that they wanted to tell the cops about the sighting, but they didn't know if it was even legal to camp where they were. And they didn't want a DUI since they had been drinking all night. So they just decided to wait on the sun to come up and until they sobered up. Once they were good and sober, they drove back up to where they had been camping. They just wanted to pick up their stuff and go home. But once they got there, all their stuff was gone. Everything. The tent and their cooler. Nothing was left. The witness said that once they got home, they told some of their friends what had happened to them. But because they had been drinking, they wouldn't believe them. So they said that they just forgot about it. Now, wow, if you ask me, they had one hell of a night. First, maybe a UFO sighting, then just a few hours later, a Dogman sighting. That's just mind-blowing. I'm glad I came across this story. Now, the witness did say that he didn't know if the strange lights had anything to do with these creatures or not. So what do you think? Was this a Dogman sighting or some kind of freaky, strange paranormal sighting? Now, with the witness saying that there were 3 or 4 of these creatures running around out there, you don't hear about Dogman sightings having more than one that often. But I don't think it was some kind of aliens either. But who knows? Maybe. So what do you think about this sighting? Drop me a comment down below and let me know your thoughts on this one. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you can keep up with all of our latest videos. And thanks for watching Those Endless Mysteries.